committee of the whole meeting. We'll call it to order. We have our recommended changes and approval of agenda. I have one thing I want to add. Since Tansy went to the LCCC thing today, let's put that like 2.3, information and discussion. You can just tell us about what happened there. So, does anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay. All right, so let's go look at our regular session on Monday. All right, how come mine won't come up? Am I logged in? It says my authentication to the server has been lost. Please log back in. So hang on, sorry. No, there I am.
That's what you get for making fun of me.
It says I'm there.
I don't think she was the one.
I'm just looking for his credits. So.
Okay, agenda. Hang on. Regular session. Now it still doesn't come up. Okay, so let me look on with you.
Okay.
So we don't.
Here.
So okay, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. We have the reorganization of our board. So it'll be of officers. So we'll have the chairman, vice chair, clerk, and treasurer for a 1-year term. So we'll be discussing that. Then we also have rec board. I believe Billy and Mike. Yes, you guys expire. So
Did you know that?
your term expires.
How did you know that before I knew that?
I have connections. So we'll be needing to decide. Do you both represent your area, don't you? So Mike is Carpenter and Billy is Burns. Will you two be interested in serving again?
I think I have to.
You both have to? Okay.
Oh, I don't have to, but I will.
Okay, you have to. All right, so we'll have that as well because that expires. And then we'll have any recommended changes to the agenda, approval of the agenda, and then a lot of recognitions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So that will be a fun night. And there's even more added
Yeah.
since I last looked at it.
Oh, yeah.
So very, very good. Then we'll have visitor and patron comments, our consent agenda, which is our minutes, and I believe our warrants are in there. And then Thomas will give us our financial report. And our new business will be the school improvement plan approval. Even though we have some schools that aren't on an improvement plan, those will be included with it. Is that correct, Mr. Parentoni?
I can put all of them on there.
What would be the board's wishes? Would you like to see all of them?
If they're all in one.
Let's see them all.
Okay.
We have a school bus replacement approval. And is there anything we need to know about that beforehand, or?
They're not cheap.
Amen.
So this is 4 of 7 that are available. We're choosing not to go after all 7 because part of the recalibration conversation centered around the state taking back over the reimbursement of leases or buses at 100%. So we didn't want to get too far down this road of doing leases, which we expect these 4 would be ready by March.
March is when they'll be ready to be delivered, and then the next batch for the order would be ready either June or July. And so if it's in July, potentially we won't be able to lease those, and we would have to purchase if legislation passes to get rid of the option to lease.
Are these route buses, Thomas?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is the 17 years ago, we bought a lot of buses. I think it was about ARA time, and they're all aging out. So we have 11, we're planning on 11 over the next year.
Whoa.
We did have the conversation about the potential for non-CDL buses, but the state will not reimburse those right now. They think that's at least a year out from being in rules to do so. So that's also a good reason for maybe a little bit of pause. These will be gasoline and not diesel. And so, but we added that on at the end of last week, so that was a new piece compared to what you saw.
Okay. Well, good information then.
Needed steps.
Then 5, there's no old business. So far, there's no policy, which I don't really intend, because I think we need to discuss through some of those ones tonight, and that might take a couple discussion sessions. There'll be an executive session. We have some hires, transfers, and resignations. And then, let's see. We'll have that information discussion. Burns Elementary will do their school report. We'll have a facilities update and a curriculum update. And then we'll have some time for all of us that went to the WSBA to be kind of thinking about some thoughts to share with the board members that didn't get to go, and then also with our public. And then our upcoming conferences and upcoming Cal board meeting dates. So is there any questions on our regular agenda for Monday? Alrighty. Okay. 2.2 upcoming conferences, COSBA. We have an early bird registration and pricing if we know we're gonna go, or we need to have that done by January 12th so we can get early bird pricing. And it's in Louisville, March 13th through 15th. The ones that I've attended in the past have been very well worth my time. I've learned a lot of good things as far as how to be a better board member, and also with some ideas of trying to think of how maybe we can better serve our students here too. So if you can go, I'm sure Cheyenne would like us to know as soon as possible, correct? Yes. Okay. Our work session items.
We still have one more, I'm having it right now.
Oh, that's right, Tansy. What happened today?
Well, I took some notes. So there was a panel, and I missed the name of the gentleman who led the panel.
Oh, I did not, he's the head of the Business Alliance,
Right.
John Blank. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, he introduced himself really fast at the beginning and then went into everything else, and I just missed that. But anyway, it was Dale Steenberg from the chamber, Megan
Degenfelder.
I was like, I butcher her name every time. State Superintendent of Schools, and then the president from LCCC. And they had kind of a panel discussion. They all sat up there, and the gentleman that was running the meeting, or running the panel, asked them some questions to start out with. I guess the main gist of it was whether or not when kids get out of school that they're prepared to either enter the workforce or go to college. And what can we do as, school districts, educators, legislators, with where the money's coming from, what can we all do to work together to provide better communication routes so that, like, we can get kids in high school maybe starting in a career path, so that, how many of us went to school to be something and are something else today? It was kind of that idea. One thing that they did mention that I found really interesting, and this was Miss Duttenfelder herself. She said that 15% of students are struggling to graduate. So why are we expecting them to come up to the same standards as the ones that are going to graduate and go to college? So, because they don't need to have the same standards to go to college, was basically what she said. And so maybe instead of trying to put she said, a square peg in a round hole, maybe instead of doing that, we look at aligning them with workforce potential. And then, so they're basically already interning, so when they leave school, they already have that relationship developed. And the only thing negative that I heard about that was, the jobs that people need to go that direction, right, are typically labor jobs. So, I think it was Dale gave an example, you're a welder until you're 35 or 40, and then you really don't wanna be crawling under vehicles in the cold anymore, or whatever, you're doing for welding. And so he said, one other responsibility that we need to have with schools and whatnot going forward, and even colleges, if they go to a tech school, also make sure we have that business piece in there, so that if you're a really good mechanic or welder or whatever, and that piece of it inside and out, it doesn't necessarily mean you could transfer over and manage that department. And so he said a lot of them, the discussion was on kind of the disconnect there as well, like, if you go straight into the workforce, when you hit that expiration, then, of your physical abilities, then what are you gonna do? So, I thought it was really interesting. They talked a lot too about, I don't know if you guys have heard of the STEM campus down in Colorado. They talked a lot about similar things that were going on in Wyoming with CWC and LCCC, where you could get some of that, it was like on-site job training through like a simulator and whatnot in different places, and how they were able to, they were like busing kids in Fremont County to the simulator so that people could take, students could take advantage of it.
Okay.
So, and they had some comments from business people just about, what they thought the missing was, but not a whole lot. It was mainly just those three chatting. Do you think is that a good summary, Justin, or did I miss something?
What did you get? Yeah.
I think you did fantastic. I think there was a really nice job of celebrating things that have been done at different levels. I think there was an effort to make sure that people recognize that this is a problem that's been talked about for a long time, but there's also been successes and increments along the way to do that one. Interesting comments that, because this was put on by the Chamber of Commerce, and just that perspective of Wyoming businesses need to start paying more because they're in competition with businesses that outside of the state. And Dale shared a couple of stories of how he encouraged some businesses to offer a bonus, and they found people, I'm not gonna use the word magically, but in that same realm. And he said Wyoming just chooses not to. Wyoming chooses not to do that. And then, of course, property taxes came up, and I think there was a lot of discussion about the realities of what it is, and I walked away from the meeting feeling like there's efforts, and there's continual efforts, and there's also continual efforts to enhance it and to get better. So what I think everybody would like to see is more of those conversations. They're not one and done. You don't walk away and you say, oh, that's what we need to do. We need to talk about specific pieces. Today was like 10,000 feet high. It was just big chunks, big pieces, and so I appreciated that there was efforts to celebrate different pieces, and then also just kind of realities. And in all fairness, I wouldn't have expected someone to say something about private sector business in a negative tone, and not in a negative way, but it was kind of mentioned that our businesses also have to step up a little bit and be willing to pay more because they're in competition as well. A lot about population and how we expect the workforce to be smaller. Also, that our policies and legislation currently in the state of Wyoming cater to one generation, and as long as that generation continues to grow, we may have policies that continue to cater to that, and that isn't always conducive to other generations staying. So I thought there was a lot of
food for thought.
There was a lot of things, and again, I hope it's not the last one.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for going, and thank you for putting that out there, because normally I'm, pay attention to those, that page, but I hadn't seen that,
Yeah,
so thank you.
well.
Thank you, and again, thank you both for going. All right. Now let's hit our policy review.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we're gonna hit it. Justin and the CCC have been working on IKF, and there are some things that, I mean, we've got this chapter 3, and I'm sure Justin will talk through us with that, of what's coming from the state. And then we also, the unknowns that we don't know what's coming from the state. And how to make a policy, which we've kind of asked him to do for our district now. So Justin, I will turn it over to you
No, thank you. Chair.
and walk us through this.
Okay, so I'm gonna use a legislative term that's not ready for prime time. So that's the reason we use right now. What's in front of you right now isn't ready for you to consider next week. This is a starting point. On November 14th, Chapter 3 became a reality as the governor signed those rules.
Okay,
So
it is
that
reality.
is something that now gives us a concrete direction on things to go forward. And so what I would like to do is just kind of walk you through the documents that I've attached there so that we can just kind of have an open dialogue. My goal in sharing this with you tonight is just to find out where the heartburn is. Because I really don't want to walk down the path further with CCC and the administration on developing this policy if we're going to hit roadblocks later. So we do that. I'm also going to tell you the reality is that things are very fluid still at the state. So we'll talk about post-secondary readiness here in a bit. That might change in January. And so that's why we're looking at this one. And then my final goal is to see if the board is comfortable in taking our current policy and breaking it into a procedure and a smaller policy so that we can constantly be adjusting the procedure as needed, but not changing the policy. So if you'll open up that chapter 3 document that's there, please. This is the actual final document that was published on the Wyoming Wild Edge website. And there's just a couple of things to look at as we look at that. If you look at the bottom of page 1, one of the biggest changes that came out of this redo is they took chapter 31, which was graduation and assessment. They had that in one set of rules, and they broke it into 2 rules, chapter 3 and chapter 4. Both were approved. We're going to talk about chapter 3 today, which is just graduation. And one of the big pieces that was added into this is section 3, which is titled at the bottom of page 1 and goes over into page 2, is the idea that we need to educate our students through the goggles of these 7 different competencies. These competencies can be found on the profile of a graduate document, which you have a copy of it there with you. And when the profile of the graduate work was done many years ago across the state, they worked on 4 areas. What do we want students to learn? How do we want them to work? What can they contribute? And how can they thrive? Those were the 4 areas they worked on. And what they found is as they looked at these 4 areas, there were 7 themes that kind of bounced around in between them. And those became the competencies. So competency 1 is that students have a mastery and application of foundational knowledge. I think I don't think that's a very hard stretch for us to prove that. And then, at a minimum, we need to be able to document and show students using one of those remaining 6 through their education. This could be done a myriad of ways. And again, I'm just throwing ideas at the wall. We'll see what sticks, and ideas. There's the path where the district picks the competencies that we have all of our kids work on. Because we don't have to do all 6, we could pick 2 or 3. And we could go that way. And that way we know that we could train professional development wise, we could do PD, all that, and do all those things. And that works fine until we get students who move in from other places. And we might not be able to do that. We could also have the students choose. And then we become documenters and trackers of those different ways for all of our students. This really needs to come from a ground up conversation with our staff and our counselors and our principals on how we can best do this. Because at the end of the day, the state is still deciding, I'll be in a meeting on Friday, the state is still deciding how we're accountable for this. I would personally like to see it in accreditation. I'd like to see it as this part of our assessment system. There is the talk of putting it as part of our report card with the federal government. And I'll talk about post-secondary readiness in a little bit. So there's those pieces. So this is a big lift. This is this ad. I'm not here to tell you that we're not doing these things. I don't know if we've done them in a concentrated and accountable driven way. I mean, I think if you look at those 6 remaining competencies, we'd love to believe that this is what we're all doing when we work with kids. But whether or not we have the least subjective way possible of documenting it, we're not there. The good news is we have 11 months and 15 days to figure out
Tell
our
me something
plan.
good,
Yeah.
tell me something
Tell
good.
me something good. We have 11 months and 15 days because we need to have a plan in place 12 months from the signing of this, which was on November 14th.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the competencies piece. And then the other piece, if you go to the bottom of page 3, letter B. Each school district shall establish high school diploma requirements and shall be reflected in policy and related documents as appropriate. The district policy shall include, okay? Doesn't say may, there's the shall, right? So, Romanet I, a description of the district's definition of passing grades. We have not done that. Or we have not been required to do that. We have 2 policies, IKA and IKA-R, which are grading practices. So as part of this entire discussion about looking at our graduation requirements, we'll also need to revisit our grading practices. We have had discussions about ineligibility lists and things that we want to do forward. So I think it all allows the opportunity in this next year for us to figure out how we want to do this best. But we have to add in a grading practices piece to our policy. And you'll see in my proposal what that might look like. Romanet 3, documentation of the options available for students to demonstrate the graduation standards established in section 3. So we have to come up with a documentation piece on how we're going to do that one. And then if I go over to page 4, that Romanet 5, or V, description of the approach adopted by the district to assist students in developing student success plans. And that's another requirement of chapter 3, is this unknown definition of what a student success plan is. We currently have student success plan in statute under alternative schools, and it's not meant to transfer over into this realm. And we don't have an alternative school, so we don't know. But for those districts that do have an alternative school, I can see how they're struggling with making that transfer over. I look at a student success plan more as like a passport. Sit down with the students and the parents at the end of their 8th grade year, talk about what do you want to do, where do you want to go, here's some options that you have, and here's what has to be done. And just have that. And that's a very crude conversation that I'm having with you today. It needs to build, right? So, and then at the bottom of that, page, within 12 months of the effective date, we have to get this done. And the implementation of these rules shall be applicable for the 9th grade class of 27-28, which is the graduating class of 2031. Now, we also have a little bit of another hiccup that we're working through, is that, we started this year talking about graduation plans and the recognition that the state of Wyoming has adjusted our standards. And in some places, they've reduced the standards on the books by 60, 70%. That does not mean that we're teaching 60 to 70% less. It just means that the standards that we're held accountable for have been reduced by that far. You still have to do all of the other standards to scaffold up, right? You have to build to when district representatives went to this, work with the state on these standards revision, I believe that the people that were working in those groups heard this statement. If a student were to take this class, what would you find most valuable? Tease out the standards that are most valuable. And of course, I would think teachers would go through that process, curriculum directors, principals would go through this process and say, okay, if this is geometry, here's the standards that we think are most important. If we are doing Algebra 1, if we're doing physical science, here's those ones that are important. And they trimmed them down. What it turned out to be is we've reduced the standards down, now every student is accountable for them. That's a struggle for our district in two major areas right now as we're trying to figure this one out. The first one is earth science. Number one, we've done earth science historically as an 8th grade class. Not necessarily as a high school level class, but an 8th grade class. And our ability to find science teachers is a challenge regardless, let alone another one, and knowing that 48 other districts might be looking for additional earth science teachers. That's a struggle for us. The other one is Algebra 2. To expect every kid in our district to graduate with multiple opportunities to show their ability to work with imaginary numbers. That's a big piece. And our math teams and our science teams are working extremely hard to try to figure this out. What's been interesting as we've gone through this year is they've kind of changing the path a little bit. They started, we wanted to do it this way, and that's really not gonna work, now we're gonna go this way. And in fact, next in 2 weeks, our Superintendent's Association is hosting a statewide meeting of as many math teachers and curriculum coordinators as we can to figure out how the best way is to get Algebra 2 standards in front of every kid. Because it's not a common thing. So that's also part of this graduation requirement piece that we're working through. So with that in mind, that's why I bring us to the idea of doing a policy and a procedure. So if you take a look at the document that says the IKF short, that is a policy that takes up 3/4 of a page for graduation standards. And I've just added some language that I have observed through chapter 3. Our students need to earn credits. They need to earn those credits through a specific set of coursework, and now they will also need to show proficiency on graduation standards. So that's an additional piece to that. We still have 26 credits. That is a conversation that I think this board wants to continue to entertain. Is that an appropriate number? And then the second part of this conversation that I think this policy has for this board to kind of work through in the next couple of months to let me know how they feel about this is the CCC last spring voted to approve credits that could count at the 8th grade, during the 8th grade year, as long as they were high school approved classes. We didn't bring that to the board for consideration because we knew we had some other things coming with that. Historically, that has been a conversation point with our board, and I think it's one that we definitely need to flush out. I can tell you that as of last spring, the CCC voted to do that. Trustee Roeder was in there, and that was something they believed in. So those are pieces that, for when it comes specific to this policy, I'm looking for us to have those conversations and figure out where we land. I would hate to go through a lot of work not knowing what some of the gutters or landmines are as we go through this one. You'll notice that in this policy I've added in the graduation standards, and I've added in a reference to grading to accommodate the chapter 3 requests. Like I said, this isn't ready for prime time.
Right. But what do you need to know from us?
I would like to
The
know in
26th.
the next, as I work with CCC on the procedure.
Okay.
So really, if the board is not at all amicable to having a policy and a procedure, if you want it all in a policy, then it's a much slower process. And that's definitely not meant to be a threat, it's gonna be a
just how it
slower
is.
process as we go through that one. If we're fine with going two different directions, the board can give us guidance on what they would like that overall umbrella policy to look like, and we can work on procedural things to work on from there.
Michael?
Madam Chair, Justin, I think I have it in my mind. Can you just give me a difference on the function of a policy and the function of a procedure and how they change your life day to day?
Thank you. Policy would be something that we've gone through a 2-reading public comment conversation. And it's not any less public than a procedure, but it's something that I see as a much more formal line. A procedure for me is something that we can revisit multiple times throughout the year and bring to the board for their, if the board wants to approve procedures, you're welcome to, but we do it for your own posterity as well. And for me, a procedure, actually, R means regulation, that the procedure for me is that it just allows us a little bit of flexibility to adjust. And then the final conversation is that as of within the last year, this board has elected that once a policy has been talked about, we will not revisit it again for at least a year. That may be a struggle with this particular policy.
Certainly.
And so my recommendation would be, my thought is if we can tease out the pieces that are potentially more fluid and make sure that we have a student who's going to graduate in 4 years, they know before their 9th grade year starts what that 4-year commitment is. But then we may, the next year, have to change the regulation for that next graduating class based off of things that are happening around us, and we have a different regulation for that graduating class. While confusing, I feel like it might be less confusing than having multiple policies that are titled the same, but are for different graduating classes. And it's a proposal.
Is that,
Yeah,
Is that
I
okay?
think I understood it, I just wanted to be sure that.
okay. Is there any other questions for Justin at this time? Billy?
I just had a question when it comes to, allowing 8th graders to take credits that count toward graduation. I totally support CCC. I would not go against their recommendation per se in this instance, but I believe that part of our conversation a couple of years ago that stemmed out of that was they were completing their graduation requirements too early, and then were not attending schools in their senior year and things like that, and that was a problem, which is why we adjusted it from doing the 8th grade credits. And so, again, especially with that 3 math credit thingy, boy, I wouldn't graduate these days, but anyways. I mean, I guess that would be a concern I would want to make sure that we are acknowledging and talking and planning for, because we're going back to something that was causing an issue for the district.
Right. Excuse me, Trustee Wilson, please know, and I think Trustee Roeder would support me in this statement, I have been very clear with CCC about that concern. And it's on their piece. Now, I don't want to muddy the waters, but there is another aspect of Chapter 3 that has come available that is a philosophical challenge to that statement. And that is for students to pass a competency-based test and test out.
That was just the constitutional test, wasn't it?
No, it would be for anyone that, and we are in no way prepared for that as a
Right.
district, because we have not built those.
That's a,
But that would be a philosophical shift to provide opportunities for students to test out of sections and or courses. Because then it does exactly what that prior concern was, is that it reduces
Their attendance.
it could
Yeah.
reduce their
Could, yeah.
attendance. And how we figure out a way to do this and maintain staffing, whether it's through electives or through core classes or a combination of both, is always going to be a struggle for us as we go through that, right? So please know, I've been very clear with the CCC that that's been an expectation, is that we don't want to put ourselves in a place where we have part-time seniors, or we're trying to come up with things for students to be considered eligible for activities, because they've got to do a certain percentage of their
Right.
day. So
Yep.
we don't want to put kids in that path.
Right.
We also recognize that some parts of our progressions could fit in 8th grade.
Right.
And so, and it's that dance. Now, the other bumper I can put on the side of the road for you is that any class that is taken at 8th grade would have to be approved by the state as a high school level class. It's not a class we say is a high school level class.
Right.
It's a class that's approved
Inside the state.
under the Hathaway Success Curriculum. So, and only those classes could do that. And we
Well,
have
and
to,
I'm thinking of the math and science, which those are high school level, we're letting the 8th graders attend based on,
right.
so that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and I think our two conversations have been foreign language and 8th grade, science,
Science, yes.
an 8th grade science class, which, as we've progressed through this year, they're not so sure they wanna keep it in 8th grade, because they're feeling like there's other things that might be more of a scaffold and prerequisite to get them there. And as we get through this year, we'll find out more and continue to work with how we get that there. But if we were continuing to adjust that as a policy, I feel like we might get lost in the fact, well, isn't that the one that we passed in March, but not
Yeah.
in April? And
Yeah.
It's confusing to me. Yeah.
I feel like if we can get a policy that makes sure that we teased out this idea of credits versus coursework. We talk about grading and graduation and the new graduation standards. That's a big bite. And then if we can have some procedural pieces, multiple procedures or multiple policies and procedures that address that, then this policy might be able to last for a couple of years, whereas the other ones would have to adjust, versus maybe this one always changing every year, and the other ones as well.
Mr. Olson?
A couple things. First off, my sticking point with the 8th grade classes was because the way the policy is currently written, it is not concise. When we talk about classes that are offered in 8th grade, and they can be counted for high school, but our high school graduation requirements were pretty specific, in high school being 9 through 12. That's where my sticking point was. This policy kind of clears that up quite a bit, and I appreciate that. And I do really appreciate that that class, and I guess I would hope that that would be with all of our classes, that they would align with the state standards and be approved by the state if we're gonna be teaching them in our classrooms, whether they're 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever, but I do agree with that. I agree with you, Mr. Parentoni, about trying to get away from this idea of credits, because that kind of, we've got it here at 26 credits, and in the current policy that credit was established when we had 7 periods a day for high school, and now we have 8. 8 times 4 is 32, and if we count a couple classes from 8th grade, then there could be a possibility of 34 credits possible. But if we're only gonna require 26, it seems to me like there's a huge gap there. I mean, just trying to do some real quick math, I mean, I could see somebody would be able to, accomplish those 26 credits, you know, by December of their senior year, you know, rather than having to attend that, spring semester. As a board, are we okay with that, or do we want to tighten that up, or do we wanna get rid of the credits, and since, chapter 3, asks us to be proficient, do we, look at, as far as our graduation requirements, focusing on the standards and the requirements that we shall do based upon chapter 3, you know, with the proficiency, and being able to, because I will say that, you can have somebody that can go to a class for an entire year and obtain credits for that class, but they would be a long ways from being proficient in, the standards that we're trying to teach in that class. And if we didn't have credits and we used proficiency, whatever that would be, you know, because that's, I think proficiency is a hard thing to try to evaluate. You know, but, I can appreciate, the work that's been done on this, and this looks to me like this is gonna be, you know, a worthwhile policy to discuss and try to refine.
It's no small task, but I appreciate the comments, trustee Olson as well. So, and, you know, in chapter 3, it defines a minimum set of coursework, which to us translates to about 13 credits. That's the minimum from the state.
Really?
Yes,
13
about 13.
is it?
Yes. The rest of it is our addition. Right. And I also want to remind everybody that we currently have a fail-safe in place, that no student can take less than a full schedule unless they're a senior and they've met a set standard of requirements to apply for a shortened schedule. So we have that fail-safe in policy JEC right now, JEC I think. So right now that has that fail-safe that holds them in that more credits than what this holds. So I'm just making sure that that's still out there. So.
Madam Chair, maybe this is just my naivety and just joining, but going back to what Mike was talking about with the competencies, couldn't we end up in the same position? I mean, couldn't somebody challenge it when they were a junior and say, I can pass these areas that you've picked and be done at that point?
If our policy allowed for competency-based opportunities.
So if we switched from credits to proficiency, could somebody come to you as a junior and say, I feel like I'm proficient? I could see my daughter having done this at a time. Could she come to you and say, I am more than proficient in all of these areas, can I be done now? Or is there a way to keep them till they're a senior?
Well, right now, we do not even though the state has approved it, our policy and even our draft policy doesn't recognize the ability of going that path.
Okay,
We're in a coursework path.
okay, thank you.
And like I said earlier, I think that's a philosophical conversation that's at multiple levels in our district. I mean, this would be comparable to town hall conversations, you know, again, about the public helping us understand, you know, where it is, and what it would look like. And it would have a potential fiscal impact on us. It would definitely it would challenge the idea of doing year-long classes versus semester classes. It could possibly challenge our daily schedule. I think there's a lot of components of going to that competency-based route that isn't how our current path operates.
Jared, do you have anything?
Sure. Question, and you've answered a lot of questions, and you obviously have a lot more questions when we're going through chapter 3 and of course this as well. As fluid as this seems to be every year, and even the years that I wasn't on the board paying attention to this, how many things always seem to come up with different changes. So that I guess there's a lot of questions with that. When Mr. Olson was talking about the credits versus proficiency, higher education isn't into proficiencies. My understanding and my remembrance is it's all been under credits, right? So if we move from elementary, which is more proficiency, into credits, and then move on towards higher education, whether it's tech school, you know, UW, whatever, it's all credit-based, as same as on the job. Where on the job, you know, training and everything else is based upon credits.
Right.
So it's just me thinking out loud, so.
So, trustee Roder, if you don't mind me, if I think of your Chem 2 class, right, how many units were in that class?
What do you mean, how many uses of
How many sections of that did you, to go through a year, how many different units did you teach through? Yeah. Just for Chem 2, just for that one class.
Cause see, for years, I mean, for over 20 years, I taught it through LCCC as a concurrent enrollment class.
So Chem 2 is not a great example, so how about just chemistry, let's just pick chemistry.
Well, that's not a good example either, because how we set it up with LCCC is Chem 1
You're
was
not
the
helping
first
me
half,
at all.
the first half. So, you know, a unit, like how many units did I teach? I
Yeah.
would probably say easily 15
Okay.
in a year.
So a competency-based approach would be students have an access to taking that end-of-unit assessment and not taking the unit. And they still earn credit for the class, depending on how that goes through, right?
Okay.
But it could be a much faster progression. You know, there's a lot of things, and I will be honest with you, this is one area of chapter 3, there's a lot of them, but this is one area that I would much rather come to this board and say, our staff would like to see this happen, versus myself, the admin, or this group say, this is where we should go. They're the ones that would have to implement
They're in
this
the
and deal
trenches.
with the day-to-day. So at this point, I'm not really wanting to touch it unless I get push to do it. And then I would happily stand next to them and come to you about that conversation.
Well, and sometimes the word proficiency can have a dual meaning, because to get the credit and pass the class, they have to be proficient. I mean, you know, so it's in there,
Right.
it's just the assessment component of being proficient versus getting the credit could be
Right.
construed differently.
And then the other thing, you know, not every school district in Wyoming, let alone in the states that touch us, that we would receive kids from. And Wyoming is historically has a 30% migrant or transient, you know, mobility rate. We could very well and have received seniors that only because of the system they were in their prior place, only had 12 credits. So we go beyond 26 and we are telling parents whose kids have been in a high school in another location somewhere in our great nation, or even in our great state, and they come into us and are like, yeah, they're not a senior. I mean, we could not get them 14 credits in a year, right? That's just not how we're built. We're nursing 8. And so that's the other side of the coin of the credits is inherited for students moving in and not to their fault,
No, yeah.
are into a new system and have to work through a different credit system through as well. So there's a lot of, and we find them by stepping on them, right? I mean, that's just how it works. It's walking in the dark, right? And so we're trying to remember those as we go through this, and it just still continues to just want to encourage you to consider the idea of having a procedure and an overarching policy that allows for end game pieces, but that procedure allows us to focus on graduating class pieces. Because ELA is just going under the microscope with the State Board of Education. That's at least a year away. That will be a whole new conversation,
Again.
again.
Right.
Matt, do you have anything?
No,
Comments?
there's a lot to it, so I would rely on the CCC to bring forward their recommendation and go forward with that, so obviously Justin has stressed the problems with the 8th graders, so I'm full aware of that, so.
Julianne?
Not really, I guess just one comment or concern, I guess, is, I'm all for, a policy and a procedure. My only concern is if the procedures are so fluid, or if the procedure is so fluid that it continually changes, and us as the board don't really know, we think we're over here, and pretty soon we're over here, and the board needs to know. Yeah, and I guess that's my only, and I think generally procedures are brought to us, but it isn't quite the same as a policy. And I mean, I'm perfectly fine with a procedure, but I just think it's something we need to be aware of, that we as a board, I mean, we don't wanna think we're over here, and enough changes have been made that all of a sudden we're over here, and we're thinking,
I thought we were here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a caution I would make.
And I appreciate that, Madam Madam Vice
You're
Chair.
okay.
Happens a lot. It always. And I do believe there is the potential to build in a statement in the policy that says the board would like to review the procedure for the next graduating class by March
Okay.
prior to their
I think
freshman
something
year.
like
That would be great.
So-
Would be really good, really good, yeah.
I think we can put something in there so that that is handed down and people know that, because that's when we'll start scheduling, we'll start, looking at those pieces, so we do not want to surprise any kid once they started 9th grade in a change. So our commitment is to the 4 years of that one, but knowing full well that that next freshman might have a different path. And you can imagine the bookkeeping and the logistics of some of that stuff, but that is truly a reflection of the world we're in right now.
Jared?
The 10,000-foot view, that we would need more and we can call it whatever, but, we need the procedure or the policy. So you have to have something structured so we can manage, and then those, people on the ground are the one that have to run the procedure, right? So that's the fluidness of what needs to be done. However, there still needs to be something that has to be pretty structured for any of this, I think. You just can't, again, like you're saying, you can't have something that's that fluid, that fluctuates. Well, because of this, we're changing this for the next group of students. My 2 cents.
Kendra?
Well, to me, how Justin has it set up, to me, the requirements are, this is what you have to do to be an LCSD 2 graduate. And the procedures is, this is how we're gonna do it.
Correct.
And the procedures, I also see, because I'm well aware that little tweaks are always handed down from WDE. And when they start messing with standards and all of that, I mean, that's where your procedures can fluctuate to accommodate those changes for each class coming in. But the policy, this is what we want. It's legal, it follows state statute, and we've got the bar set here for our kids, not at 13 credits. So, I mean,
That blows me away, the 13th grade thing.
and it's basically your 4 core subjects.
Yeah, I think it,
Yeah,
I
they
think
don't
it
go
plays
beyond
out,
the 4
right,
cores.
and if you remember, part of our original struggle was in 16-17 when Hathaway came to play. We put Hathaway in as part of the graduation requirements, right? And that, I think that may have skewed our vision of what state requirements are versus a Hathaway, and that's, I'm not saying that's bad.
It's just what
That,
it
I
was.
think that's just what happens.
Michael?
I'm going to put a bar in the spokes, I guess. I look at it and say the state says 13 credit hours. and I'm gonna say some of the fine print out loud, butts in the seat are dollars. They're supplying the dollars. That's the supply that we need to continue getting funded by the state. We can demand this, 26 credits, but in that demand, if we aren't supplying something that they wanna be there, idle hands stuff is the devil's playground. I say, go right to the state WHSAA, there's a lot of kids that wanna be here for sports for 4 years, they require 5 credit hours, 5 hours a day, is that correct, Justin? So we have that guardrail that says if you wanna play 4 years, if you wanna do this 4 years, and then challenge ourselves to be better to say, hey, this is an opportunity, and as parents, if we are just driving it from a say, this is what a graduate is, and we're gonna demand it, then they have to show up, and I think if we take that away, we have to get better, and we have to supply something that they want. If they're the supply of what we want, and it's a two-way street, the demand that you have to show up that we'll supply something, but participation in it, and I'm in the middle of finishing 5 kids in high school, and I'm like, there's some interesting schedules their senior year, and I don't like to look at it that way, that's probably unpopular, but I think we need to get better in some of the things that the kids and the parents say. This is the best opportunity for my kid, a free education, and it's not driven by 26 hours, just like we heard from what happened at LCCC. What do the different courses look like? Kids that are going to a 4-year education, what do they need? And kids that, if they start work at 17, that may be a benefit for the whole system. That's probably unpopular, but I think, look at it, say, 26 credits. There's, my household will graduate with all the credits and pretty well a associate's degree, every one of them, and have not, I just have some opinions on that, but I think we can get better, that the kids say, I don't have to be there, but I want to be there. That's a challenge, I think, as a school district that we could take.
And honestly, Madam Chair, Trustee Larwick, that actually plays into the next part of the conversation, so thanks for the segue. Sounds good. If you wouldn't mind opening up the document that says Wyoming Accountability System, and go to page 2. Aren't flow charts fun?
I was gonna say,
Right, yeah.
oh, I just love
So this is how the report card, so the information I shared with you in the fall on how our report, how our kids did, our schools did exceeding expectations. And of course, as I mentioned before, our 2 high schools are not at the meeting for different reasons. One area that we are continuing to grow and get better on, and I'm proud to tell you that when I started here, we did not have both of our schools proficient in the post-secondary readiness indicator, and we do now. And I think that's a big step. I think it's something we do well, and I think it's something worth fighting for. And that's part of the challenge that I'm working on with this state work group. But if you look at that box that says post-secondary readiness indicator, and it goes down to 3 other pieces: college ready, career ready, and military ready. As a school, we are working through the idea, or we continue to work through ideas of tailoring their programming to things that they might value and want to come and do more. We do have some kids that are going to be college ready, and we're going to do that through that successful preparatory curriculum. We're going to offer the CE and the DE of our concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment, by the way. And we don't offer AP or the IB programs in our district, but we do offer concurrent and dual enrollment. And then every junior takes the ACT. So we put every student in our district at the ability to be college ready. Some of them may, some of them may not, but they do. We also have put a lot of focus into continuing work on CTE concentrators, which is to say that students who like woodshop, they take multiple years of woodshop. That becomes a concentrator for them. And then we also provide opportunities. Our most common one is in food service. We get students who get food service or OSHA 10 certifications. We provide that for opportunities for those students. So that's a way that we go work on career readiness. And then, of course, always looking for military readiness. And that's primarily driven through the ASVAB taken. I share this with you because I agree, we have to figure out ways for students to want to engage. And we start that engagement in 8th grade when we let that student and their parents know what the commitment is from both sides for 4 years. And that would be through a passport, some type of planning with them, which is what we currently do. And I believe we can always make that stronger. So with that in mind, that post-secondary readiness indicator, right now for our students, for our district's report cards, that counts towards 15% of their total score. I don't think it's near high enough for as much work as we put into it. Now, with the federal government, we can push that to 28%. And that's what I'm encouraging our state to consider, is moving that post-secondary readiness indicator. Takes a little less off of the Y-top scores and a little bit more into the work we're doing with kids in areas they want to go into. I like that. There's also a proposal out there to get rid of that entire post-secondary readiness indicator and just do student success plans in the place of it. I personally struggle with that because what I see for college readiness, career readiness, and military readiness is good for kids. It's good for us to help give them guidance and a direction to go and where we want to go. So I'm just letting you know, as superintendent, I'm going into these conversations with the idea of trying to build up our district by things that we are doing well in the state eyes. But if you just keep that in the back of your mind and then open up the procedure that I have for you, which is the IKF 29 procedure, you'll see that looks very similar to what our policy looks like now, until you get to page 2.
Okay.
And these are, when we get anything that's in yellow is something that's required out of chapter 3. If it's in red, but it's not in yellow, they're ideas. They're things I'm throwing at the wall. Definitely not saying it's a requirement, but they're ideas. So I'm just gonna throw this out there and I say, I think every kid in our district should take the ASVAB. Now I found out today, this is how fluid this is, I found out today that ASVAB can only be given starting their sophomore year, not their freshman year, so I gotta change that wording if we decide to go with that one. But the point of the ASVAB is to not only decide if they hit a military score to be accepted into any one of the branches of military, but it also gives ideas of things they like, which is a programming direction, right? You know, so
Used to have all the kids do that.
we can use our procedure to say we expect our students to do this. Now, if every kid takes the ASVAB, which they don't right now, but if every kid takes the ASVAB, that's just 2 more chances that some kids will hit the qualifying number, and that's our indicator is marked, because they only have to do one of those 3. I would also think, and put this out there for the board just to chew on, and I'm gonna put it in front of the CCC and in front of the secondary facilitators on Friday, is how do we feel about expecting every one of our kids to take a college class while they're in high school? Whether it's dual or concurrent. Just putting that idea out there, right? Those are just, what is our standard, right? It's not just a number. What are some things that we want Laramie 2 kids to walk away from? And then I think that also is gonna play into that idea of those graduation standards in the bottom about competencies. What do we want our kids to be able to do when they leave here? You look at those different bulleted points down there. Our graduation is not a number. That's one of the things that we do as a countdown. It helps people to get there. Goodness, my two kids in college are already looking at their numbers that they need to have, you know, to get to those things. But that's not our graduation that's not what we consider to be our entire graduation standard set. What we want for a graduate and then walk across our stage is a culmination of a lot of things, not just whether or not they came for credits. And so I'm putting this out there as just some ideas that we can put in. I mean, like I said, that fluid, I've already got to tweak one of them, because we administered the ASVAB to all of the juniors today in Pine. And they would like to keep it at the junior level because there seems to be less assessments
For that age.
for that age group. I think those are all things that we just need to have those conversations and be open about. I just like to put things on the wall, just to say, here's something, let's tear it apart, see what we can do with it, so.
I was actually gonna recommend junior year as well. You do the best in the ASVAB area with reading comprehension. If you look at our historical scores or whatever, right, you're looking at when our kids are showing that proficiency in reading comprehension, so they'll do better on ASVAB. You might be able to get into the military with like medium ASVAB scores, but you're like truck drivers and stuff like that. And so yes, that's a cool path, but if we can set them up for success to do any myriad of jobs, then again, that's one of those.
And I appreciate that. I was balancing the idea between taking it for an application to apply for a branch of the military and using it to gather data on what classes, what paths they like
What they like.
for programming, you know, and is the junior year.
That's how we used to, the juniors always took the ASVAB when I was teaching, years ago. I don't know when they kind of stopped doing that, but every year, the fall, they took the ASVAB, and in the spring, they took the ACT.
Yeah. And we're fortunate now because we can actually administer the ASVAB ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's online, so.
Yeah, because we had to take them, I think, to Cheyenne to do it, back in the day.
Well, many moons ago, when I took it, it was a great talking point with my parents, with the counselor, as far as like what career path was available, if thought I was good at. So it's also a talking point with parents.
Waiting till junior year, another advantage of that is, you know, as a sophomore, I don't know how much you comprehend, that what you do today actually impacts what your choices are gonna be in the next couple of years. But by junior year, next year, you're a senior, right? And you're starting to think about those kind of things. And so there's some maturity that happens. And so you might actually get some valid answers in your ASVAB type
Well,
things.
a lot of your elective classes start opening up your junior and senior year too, so, you know, the requireds are what we're on.
See, these are all the great conversations that we can just start feeling how people view this and the perspective of it, so. My hope is the board will consider the idea of going procedure policy route. Otherwise, we just combine the two, and we have an extremely long policy that we probably won't have ready until fall of next year.
Board, is that something we can decide tonight? Or do you want some time to chew on that? I mean, it would help.
Yeah, like I said, it's not ready for
I mean,
the show, so
I'm
I
talking-
mean,
but it
we don't
would
have to
be like,
decide this tonight.
okay, here's our
I'd like to
blessing.
know what the teachers and counselors, what they think.
Before.
Okay. And I'm meeting with the facilitators for the high school core classes on Friday, and then we have this on the CCC in January, so.
Okay.
It's not meant to be a rush.
Okay,
I just
just
planted
good
some seeds.
discussion
Yeah,
tonight.
planting some seeds.
Okay. We'll entertain it more later. Is any others levels to this onion? Layers.
I do believe that sometime over the course of this school year, the State Board of Education and WDE will bring accountability back up. Superintendent Degenfelder talked about it quite a bit today, in front of a group of people that probably hadn't heard that phrase, you know, in terms of school accountability. And then, let's say they get rid of the post-secondary readiness indicator, then our district has this conversation about the ASVAB doesn't provides one less thing for us, you know, requiring students to take one concurrent or dual class isn't necessarily something that helps us with our post-secondary readiness indicator anymore. And we would put more effort and information into a student success plan, which could include those things. but not necessarily something that also helps us show an accountability piece as well.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions, thoughts? Well, thank you, Justin, for bringing this to our attention and working on it. And I know, up at Casper, I sat down with other board members, from other districts talking about the same thing as far as, you know, the ASVAB. How do you get kids ready for their life after high school? And that's been a struggle in not just our district, so. Alrighty. Potential policies discussion. So we had the,
Yeah, so Madam Chair, just for clarity, if it's under policy review, I took it out of potential policies.
okay,
So you have,
our policy
so
review.
potential policies that I think are coming up, or the potential, or the policy review would be IKF,
Okay,
IKA, which is grading,
okay,
and then we started last, or the board started last month, admissions.
exactly.
So those are probably the three big ones that are on the horizon right now.
Does anybody wanna talk about admissions? Do we wanna? I know we never do.
I still do.
We still never do.
I still do. I think it would be
Okay.
very prudent of us to have a policy that indicates, what our process is gonna be based on our current local population of how we allow out-of-resident students attend our training, our schools. So,
Okay,
I do think it's important.
any thoughts tonight?
I mean, I like what we've done a little bit in the past, so I don't know if it ever made it in writing, now I can't remember, but like the whole, you know, especially for Burns Elementary that fills up pretty quick, and Burns is a kind of a feeder for Cheyenne kids and things, but, you know, if we're at this rate, we can accept us out of district students. If we're not if we're above this rate, then we, you know, our students get the priority. I mean, that sounds common sense in my head, but I recognize that not, you know. So like that would be a very doable, easy to manage in my mind, because it's black and white. We're at this percent, see you next year.
Okay. Tansy,
I just have a question, who makes this decision? I mean, once they turn all this stuff in, is it brought to the board to say, little Johnny can go to school, or is it made at the superintendent level, is it made at the school level? How does that work?
to me, it's been at, like, Jerry, I know, has
School
said,
level.
you know.
So basically, our responsibility then would be, like Billy said, to put something in place where
To give them some.
they have a hard
guidance.
cap and they can't just keep going.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, I would also add, Trustee Durner, that that also helps parents understand that it's not a school personal preference, but if they're following something, in case they were to choose to go to the next level of the chain of command, they would receive the same response.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Julianne, you've had experience with this admissions policy forever. Give us some history.
Oh, I don't even know what to say. I mean, like you said, we've talked about it, and then we seem to not want to talk about it, because sometimes it can open a can of worms about, and sometimes, I will say this, that there's been, it's one of those things that, as a board member, I thought it was one way, and it turns out it wasn't. So, I think probably the one thing I would say is I would agree with Billy that maybe we need to talk about it a little bit more. And if we do have a good policy, it is a good guideline for the schools at the school level to administer that policy. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding kind of broken, I'm spending more time trying to keep
Get your
my,
computer.
I'm having a terrible time with my computer tonight.
It's not staying awake, is it?
No, it's not, I can't, and I open up something and then it closes on me, and so, I'm ready for a new computer.
I will check on them.
Thank you.
I know, Justin, you have provided us in the past what other districts have included in their policy. I
It's at
think
the
Goshen
bottom.
was one,
I provided some southeast ones earlier.
Yeah, and I was just looking at those as well, yes, and there are, we have quite a few things to look at there.
And another, to address trustee Wilson's statement about capping percentages, we have a different policy, which is the school attendance area policy, JC. And we use an out-of-district boundary waiver there at that place. That seems like a good place to publish caps. But it might not necessarily be in this policy, but it could be in that policy that we would entertain. But there again, so just having fun with the gray area of that one, what does that mean for a student who attended last year, but now is out of residency, you know? I mean, I think there's ways we can play, you know. So I know this year, Jerry did not allow some students to transfer in from even within district, because we had to leave a certain amount of seats in there before the school year even started, because we didn't know how many kids still lived within his boundary area. And so the conversation about the out-of-district also will play a little bit into the honoring of our interior district boundaries as well. So whether it's better served to be on our school attendance area policy or in this one. And again, just the last part that I'll bring up today is that the last paragraph in the proposed JEC, or the JEC policy about expecting students, parents to have registration completed by a certain time frame. We're gonna make sure that we get that in play this spring, is a big deal, regardless of the conversation about the above paragraphs.
right.
And if at a minimum, to have something in place by early spring with regards to
that
registration
particular.
expectation would help us.
I guess I'm a
I
little
will.
surprised. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you are actually asking for a little bit of history, I mean, this is going back quite a ways, but we have, over the course of time, definitely tightened up our, as Justin said, our boundaries. I mean, I think most of us that have been in the district for a long time can remember when, if you were a student in the district, you could pretty much go to school wherever you wanted to, and we bused you there. Or, you know, that type of thing we have definitely worked on over the years, especially the transportation piece of it. And so, you know, we still, if you want to go to a different school, I mean, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to, but you're gonna have to, your parents are gonna have to at least get you to the closest bus for that school. Now, can I ask a question, if I can get this one back open again? The J, let me see here. Okay,
I don't know which one you want.
well, yeah, that's,
It's open, that's
okay,
what you wanted.
no, let's go back down here.
The policy.
Yeah, to the, policy review, yeah, let's see. Is that the one I was looking at? JFAB, the model WSBA one, is that the one where it says it was adopted in 1999? Or is that a different one?
Yep,
Yeah,
8/16,
yeah.
1999 was the last revision date.
Now, I understand, that's just an example one,
Anybody else wanna weigh in? Crickets. Okay, well,
but.
we're chewing on those back teeth.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, you want.
All right, well, I think, the discussion of rates, we need to come up with come up with a rate, I guess, the board does, to,
Well, that would be
And
out
do
of
some-
state, which, is that what you're talking about, out of state? Out of,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we don't have any out of state, this would be just even capping for transfers within the district or from within the state or out of district.
Oh, percentages.
Yeah,
okay,
capping,
Yeah,
right.
not.
Sorry, when she said rate, my brain went to what we're charging on them. I was
Oh,
like,
no, I'm sorry, I used
no.
the wrong terminology,
Okay,
percentages, yes.
okay.
Is 20 seem to be the common cap for like K-5? 20
So,
students per class?
yeah, so we are
section.
funded
So
K3,
far.
so, thank you. We are funded so far at 16 to 1 K3, and then 21 to 1, 5, 8, and then 25 to 1 after that.
Okay.
So we've tried to preserve those.
Numbers, okay.
And we have observed, at least in my 4.5 years here, ebbs and flows across our district of different, especially kindergarten classes.
Right.
And where those come into play, and they move around a little bit. And we also recognize that, especially with Alvin and or Carpenter, that once the oldest student in a family makes it to Burns or Pine, we tend to see all of them go. And I completely understand that as a family, your youngest kids would be getting home earlier on a bus than the other kids would be. And so I understand that piece, but we do watch that ebb and flow as we go through that.
Madam Chair, would you have that same issue if you know, if we set a cap at, you know, we said we could never go above 20 or whatever, if you let somebody in, say, Burns High School, and they have a younger brother or sister that would be Burns Elementary, would we have any heartburn against cutting that off and saying the high school kid could come because we have room, but the elementary can't?
Yes, we would have heartburn. A lot of people would have heartburn with
Right,
that, you
that's,
know.
yeah.
And so, and that's why I brought that up earlier about, you know, historically, this family's been here and now, but they've been from out of district, or they've been from a different part of our district, and now we've had this influx of people now living in Burns, and they're within the attendance area, so now we've got this stressor of those things, and we've watched that happen in the last couple of years from different grade levels. One of the things we put in place to try to address that potentially is we've expected families to reapply every year, just to try to get in that habit of that. We haven't necessarily denied. We've denied new requests, but ones of a student that they had last year, this year. And then you also have one other piece of your policy, a different policy that says that during a student's elementary career, they can only move to one other building without a parent address change. And I will tell you that recently, that one's been kind of a rub with some families, that they would like to pick and choose where their kids go based on a myriad of factors, but they're not moving. And I struggle with, you know, staffing those changes, because those changes don't happen in the spring, they happen right before school starts. We have that staffing thing, we're not ready for that one. And then, if we're not gonna transport them, then we will always have an attendance concern, especially on a day like today. And so, I think, you know, the more we can keep our kids in our attendance areas, the better Lance does with his pieces. But we do run into struggles when the elementary kids have in a family, have a sibling that is now at the high school level or at the 7th grade level. I understand that push-pull, and it's just something that we continue to deal with.
Let's keep talking.
Well, how long are we gonna talk about this, or how long are we gonna actually like pull the policy in to actually do some work on it and stuff? Like, we've been talking about this policy for like
Pull the plug
months.
on it and put it into policy
mean-
review.
Yes, please.
Alrighty. All right.
So would that be in regular session January? Is that what you're asking?
To move it to regular session January?
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Of 26, not 27. No.
Okay,
I had to write that down, thank you for that. I
let's
just
see.
figured out how to write on my checks 2025.
I know, I know.
Now I get it
and-
ready for a whole new year.
And you find it challenging for somebody your age, no? Okay.
There's only a day's difference.
Okay. Let's go to potential discussion topics. I think, Michael, you had something that you'd like to bring to us.
Yeah, so we all know that we lost a great friend of the district and Mr. Eklund. I mentioned it to Heidi. I've heard stories, I visited with some fellow board members of how much of a friend he was to this district. I talked to Taft, he loaded up in a car and drove to Sheridan to be sure that the Pine Bluffs Elementary got off dead center at a facilities meeting. And he was always a good ear. I think every time we went to WSBA conference, he was always there, and he was good to our district. So I didn't know if, and I visited with Susie about this idea. She's very much in favor, thinks it would be a neat deal, just some benches. I would just discuss where, how many, one location of he was always a great listener. And so I see a listening bench, you know, somebody sitting there, somebody can pull up and be listened to, or the other way around, just as a memorial with a plaque of appreciation for the work that he did for us.
Right.
So, just an idea. There is one option right in Pine Bluffs. I don't know if that would be the chosen spot, if it's one or if it's a couple. And there, maybe Justin, you could fill in where that is.
Yeah, yes, sir. Between the elementary school and the park, when we bought the road, so to speak, and we took over that space, there's always been an emergency siren. Is
Yeah.
there. The wind has taken its toll on that siren, and she's slowly starting to come
Imagine.
over this way. So they would like to, and that being Laramie County EMA, would like to remove that siren and the pole and place it in a new location, which is just to the northeast corner of the park in the grass. The pole currently sits in concrete. And so we met with EMA and Mayor Fornstrom and just talked about, you know, what would it look like to take this pole out and the vault and with the power and everything like that, and not tear up sidewalk. And we came up with the idea of just taking the pole off at concrete level and placing some ornamental rocks and a two-way bench that would be facing both the park and the school. And EMA is willing to fund this, and so that's just one bonus of this. It's a year out to get to this point, but they wanted to have this conversation with us. When Mr. Lerwick called, it just seemed like that was just one potential possibility of what it is. I'm not gonna make it a concern, is that we're having this conversation. District doesn't have a policy on memorials, and I don't know if you'll want to have some type of published guideline for the unfortunate idea of future requests, what that might mean. And so just that's also kind of a food for thought in this one, and what would it mean for a sanctioned memorial at the board level? Just, those are just my thoughts.
Well, since it's a potential discussion topic, we'll talk about it again at next Cal, and everybody come with their thoughts regarding memorials, memorial policy, or even, and this bench, or idea. So, if you have questions, please weigh in with Michael. I think he's got some ideas and has talked to other people about this potential idea, so we'll look to you for our answers.
Great.
Okay. Billy?
My apologies for not getting to talk to you about this beforehand, but I talked to Taft on Monday.
Oh,
And he is still very much interested in meeting with the school board, and since we will have a replacement, for John, by then, it would be perfect timing to get something scheduled in January to meet with Taft and the new House representative.
Okay.
And he's preferring January because session goes back in February and he really is not familiar yet with what that's gonna look like, so.
Okay. Did he shoot you any dates?
He tried to call me yesterday and then I called him and I don't think he knows what tag your it means, cause he didn't call me back.
Okay, so maybe we'll just be on the lookout in a text message?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds
And
good.
Billy sat on the
Yes,
precinct committee and Heidi and I were there, the three, if nobody's aware of the three that will be chose at 3:30 Saturday at the county commissioners. Ron Raybo, Justin Fornstrom and Sharon Payne were put forward, and I think by probably late afternoon, we will know who that is Saturday.
Saturday, okay.
Open to the public. It was front page of the paper today.
It's an interesting process. I went,
Yeah.
thank you for wearing many hats. She's not just a school board member, trustee. So, all right, I have no visitor and patron comments unless Thomas and Cheyenne and Lisa, no. All right. So, with that, we have an executive session. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Billy, seconded by Michael. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right. Thank you for.